You think guilt and shame are the same thing. They're not. One makes you better, the other makes you hide. And if you can't tell the difference, you're probably destroying yourself with the wrong one right now. I'll show you exactly how in the next 20 seconds. Why it matters. The emotion you feel after a mistake either pushes you toward growth or pulls you into isolation. Sadly, most people are using the one that guarantees they'll repeat the same failures forever. What's the difference? Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt focuses on behavior. Shame attacks identity. When you feel guilt, you think about what you did wrong. When you feel shame, you think about what's wrong with you. An example could be you snap at your partner. Guilt makes you think, I shouldn't have said that. Shame makes you think, I'm a terrible person who ruins everything. Guilt activates your anterior cingulate cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for error detection and course correction. Shame floods your amygdala with threat signals and shuts down your prefrontal cortex. You literally can't think clearly. Next time after a mistake, ask yourself, what did I do? Not, what am I? Here's why that matters more than you think. Guilt motivates. Guilt is uncomfortable on purpose. It's designed to make you fix things. When you feel guilty, your brain sees a solvable problem. You apologize. You make amends. You change the behavior. Then the guilt goes away. An example could be that you forget your friend's birthday. Guilt makes you text them, apologize, and plan something special. The discomfort ends when you take action. Guilt triggers approach motivation. Your brain releases just enough dopamine to make reparative action feel rewarding. You move toward the problem. Next time when you feel guilty, write down one specific action that would make it right, and then do it within 24 hours. But what about shame? It does the exact opposite. Shame paralyzes. Shame doesn't want you to fix anything. It wants you to disappear. When you feel shame, your brain interprets the problem as you. You can't fix yourself by apologizing or changing one behavior. So you do nothing. You withdraw. You hide. Same example of you forget your friend's birthday. But instead of reaching out like before, shame makes you avoid them for weeks because you've decided you're a bad friend who doesn't deserve good relationships. Shame activates your dorsal vagal system. That's the part of your nervous system responsible for shutdown and dissociation. Studies show it suppresses immune function and increases cortisol, the stress hormone, for days. Next time, try to notice when you're avoiding something. Ask yourself, am I hiding from a behavior or from being seen? And here's where it gets worse. Shame spreads. Shame doesn't stay contained, it can contaminate. One shameful moment becomes proof of a shameful life. You mess up at work, and suddenly you're convinced you're incompetent at everything. You say something awkward at a party, and you're sure everyone thinks you're a social disaster. Shame generalizes. Let's say you get rejected after a job interview. Instead of thinking, that role wasn't the right fit, shame makes you think, I'm unemployable, and you stop applying to jobs altogether. Shame activates overgeneralization pathways. Your brain starts pattern matching every past failure as evidence of your inherent brokenness. Psychologists call this global negative self-attribution. Next time when shame tries to expand, force specificity. Write down exactly what happened. Write only just the facts, no interpretation. But guilt does something smarter. Guilt stays specific. Guilt knows the difference between a mistake and a person. It has a boundary. It targets the action, not your existence. You were late. Maybe made up a tiny story. You broke a promise. Those are specific, fixable things. Guilt keeps the problem small enough to solve. An example might be that you eat an entire pizza when you said you'd eat healthy. Guilt says, I made a choice I regret. Shame says, I have no self-control and I'll always be like this. Guilt preserves self-efficacy and esteem. Research from Stanford shows people who experience guilt after setbacks are 40% more likely to try again. Shame cuts that number in half. After any shaming moment you feel in the future, complete this sentence. I am someone who is a good person, and I just made a small error. I will make it better. This can pull you out of shame. Here's why most people never learn this. Shame feels moral. Shame pretends it's making you a better person. It disguises. It says, if you feel bad enough about yourself, you won't do it again. But that's a lie. Shame doesn't prevent bad behavior. Studies show it predicts more of it. When people feel defective, they stop trying to improve. Why bother if you're fundamentally broken? Let's say that someone with a drinking problem feels deep shame after a relapse. Instead of seeking help, the shame convinces them they're beyond help. Because of the deep feeling, they drink more to numb the shame. Shame creates a self-fulfilling prophecy loop. Your brain starts selecting for evidence that confirms your unworthiness, making behavior change feel impossible. Next time, when you catch yourself thinking, I'm just a regretful person, add the word sometimes in front. I sometimes act in ways I regret. And guilt knows something shame doesn't because guilt connects. When you feel guilty, you reach out. You repair, you communicate, you reestablish connection. Guilt is inherently social. It assumes the relationship is worth fixing. It assumes you're worth keeping around. You just need to make something right. Maybe you cancel plans with a friend at the last minute. Guilt makes you call them, explain, and reschedule. The relationship strengthens because you showed you care. Guilt activates prosocial neural networks. Research from the University of Queensland found that guilt increases empathy and cooperative behavior. It literally makes you better at relationships. You can use guilt as a signal to initiate repair. The faster you act on it, the shorter it lasts. But shame has a different strategy because shame isolates. Shame tells you that you're the problem. It can create withdrawal. And if you're the problem, the solution is to remove yourself. You stop showing up. You don't return texts. You cancel plans and hope people forget about you. Shame makes loneliness feel like protection. Using the same canceled plan scenario as above, shame convinces you that your friend is better off without you. So you don't reschedule. You quietly let the friendship die. Isolation and withdrawal reinforces shame. Without external feedback to challenge your distorted self-view, shame becomes your only narrative. Studies show chronic shame is a stronger predictor of depression than childhood trauma. It's always a good idea to force yourself to share the shameful moment with one safe person. Shame can't survive being spoken out loud. Here's what nobody tells you about this. Guilt has an expiration date. Guilt ends when you make amends. That's the whole point. It's temporary discomfort designed to create permanent change. You feel it, you fix it, it's over. Your brain rewards you for completing the loop. Another example might be that you break your roommate's mug. You feel guilty, you replace it, and apologize. The guilt dissolves. Done. Completing the guilt cycle releases a small burst of dopamine and oxytocin. Your brain learns that repair is possible, making you more likely to take responsibility in the future. Start tracking your guilty feelings to resolution. Notice how quickly they disappear once you take action. Shame has a very different timeline because shame becomes identity. Shame doesn't have an off switch. Because you can't fix who you are. You can only hide it. Shame embeds itself into your self-concept. It stops being a feeling and becomes a fact. I am shameful replaces I feel shame. And once that happens, every action is filtered through that lens. A series of relationship failures causes shame to convince you that you're unlovable. Now every interaction is colored by that belief. Someone compliments you? They just don't know the real you yet. Shame becomes a cognitive schema. It's like an automatic lens through which you interpret reality. It takes conscious, repeated effort to dismantle. Without intervention, it can last decades. Try to separate the feeling from the identity. Practice saying, I'm experiencing shame right now, instead of, I am ashamed. And here's the trap everyone falls into. People weaponize shame. Shame is a control mechanism. Parents use it, partners use it, society uses it. Because shame is effective. If someone feels defective enough, they'll do anything to hide it, including shrinking themselves, staying quiet, or accepting mistreatment. A parent says, "You're so selfish," instead of, "That behavior was selfish." The child doesn't learn to change their actions. They learn to hate themselves. Early shame literally shapes brain development. Kids exposed to shame-based parenting show reduced gray matter in areas responsible for self-regulation and emotional processing. Pay attention to whether criticism targets behavior or identity. If it's the latter, reject it immediately. But guilt does something healthier. Guilt respects boundaries. Guilt can be given, but it can't be forced. You either did something that violated your values or you didn't. No one can make you feel guilty for something you genuinely don't believe was wrong. Guilt requires your agreement. It respects your moral autonomy. It has limits. Someone may get upset that you set a boundary. They want you to feel guilty for being selfish. But if you know the boundary was necessary, the guilt doesn't land. Healthy guilt aligns with your internal moral compass. When someone tries to guilt you into something that contradicts your values, your interior insula activates. That's the part of your brain that detects incongruence. You feel resistance, not remorse. When someone tries to make you feel guilty, ask yourself, did I actually violate my values or just their expectations? And this is where most people stay stuck. Shame keeps you small. Shame convinces you that you're not allowed to want better things. To succeed, to be seen, to take up space seems like a negative desire through shame. It's like a prison. Because if you're fundamentally flawed, who are you to dream? Who are you to try? Shame keeps you in the audience of your own life, watching everyone else live. Let's say you have an idea for a business, but shame whispers, who do you think you are? You'll just fail and prove everyone right. So you never start. Shame suppresses dopamine pathways related to motivation and reward anticipation. Over time, you stop generating goals altogether. Your brain learns that wanting leads to pain. If you find yourself caught in shame, then do one thing shame says you're not allowed to do. Start small. The act of defiance rewires the circuit. Guilt has a totally different message. Guilt assumes you're capable. Guilt only shows up when your brain believes you can do better. It's a sign of standards, of potential. If you didn't think you were capable of more, you wouldn't feel guilty. You'd feel nothing. Guilt is your brain saying, you're better than this, so act like it. Maybe you procrastinate on a project and feel guilty. That guilt exists because some part of you knows you have the skills to complete it. You're just not using them. Guilt activates the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning and self-improvement. It's literally the brain's way of preparing you to level up. Reframe guilt as a compliment. Your brain wouldn't bother if it didn't think you could change. Here's the part that changes everything. You can transform shame into guilt. Shame isn't permanent. You can catch it mid-spiral and convert it. The moment you notice you're thinking, I am bad, stop. Redirect to, I did something I regret. Same discomfort, different direction. One destroys you, one builds you. An example could be that you lose your temper and raise your voice at someone you love. Shame says, I'm an angry, broken person. You catch it and translate, I lost control of my emotions at that moment, and I need to apologize and learn better regulation skills. This cognitive shift reactivates your prefrontal cortex. You move from threat mode to problem-solving mode. Studies show this simple reframe reduces rumination by over 60%. Every time you notice I am, replace it with I did or I felt. And here's how you practice. Speak shame out loud. Shame survives in secrecy. It thrives when you keep it hidden, when you assume you're the only one who feels it. But the moment you say the shameful thing out loud to someone who responds with empathy, shame loses its power. Because shame can't survive connection. Maybe you tell a trusted friend, I feel like a failure because I got fired. They respond, that sounds really hard. Losing a job doesn't make you a failure. Suddenly, the shame story cracks. Brené Brown's research shows that sharing shame with an empathetic listener activates neural circuits associated with safety and belonging. Your ventral vagal system comes back online. You can breathe again. The antidote is to identify one person who has earned the right to hear your shame. Share one thing this week. This is the ultimate test. Watch how you talk to yourself. The way you speak to yourself after a mistake reveals which emotion you're operating from. It's like a mirror. If your inner voice is cruel and punishing, then that's shame. If it's firm but fair, specific, solution-oriented, then that's guilt. Maybe you forget an important deadline. Shame voice. You're such an idiot. You always mess everything up. You're going to lose your job. Guilt voice. I made a mistake. I need to tell my manager, apologize, and set up a system so this doesn't happen again. Self-compassion research from Kristin Neff shows that people who treat themselves kindly after failure recover faster and perform better on subsequent tasks. Harsh self-criticism activates the same brain regions as physical threat. After any mistake, talk to yourself the way you'd talk to a friend. Not coddling, not harsh, just honest and kind. Here's why this matters more than anything. Shame prevents change. People think shame motivates improvement. It doesn't. It freezes you. Shame is a blocker. Research is crystal clear. Shame-prone individuals are more likely to repeat destructive behaviors, not less. Because when you believe you're fundamentally broken, change feels pointless. Someone struggling with their health feels intense shame about their body. That shame doesn't make them go to the gym. Instead, it makes them avoid looking at themselves in the mirror, skip doctor's appointments, and eat emotionally to numb the feeling. Shame triggers avoidance learning. Your brain learns to avoid anything that might trigger shame, including the very actions that would solve the problem. You become allergic to growth. Before trying to change a behavior, address the shame around it first. Otherwise, you're building on a foundation that wants you to fail. This is the truth. Guilt says you did something wrong. Shame says you are something wrong. Guilt motivates repair. Shame motivates hiding. Guilt keeps the problem specific. Shame makes it your identity. Guilt assumes you can change. Shame assumes you can't. Guilt ends when you make amends. Shame becomes who you are. One emotion builds you, the other buries you. And the difference between the two determines whether you grow from your mistakes or get crushed by them. Choose the one that lets you stay in the game. If this hits you differently than you expected, you know what to do. Subscribe if you want more psychology that actually helps you see and understand yourself better. And leave a comment with one thing you're done feeling shame about, because shame dies in daylight. If you've been in the dark, you've been there long enough.